Hey y'all, this is Callahan from the Great Unlearn podcast on Ever Forward Radio. Today, Chase and I talked about giving yourself grace. Think about that. It's not easy, but there's a lot of medicine in that. We also talked about parenting. For all of you out there, we really, I think, bend the lens on what it means to show up for your kids and how our society has given us different tools, and it's my intention to share my tools with others. So I hope you enjoy the show. It was an amazing conversation.
3, 2, 1.
So literally one Sunday, I got up at 6 a.m, I think, and I just started moving shit out and putting stuff in, and it was a 14-hour day.
Wow.
And midway through the day, I came out to her, and she was in the kitchen. I feel like a kid who got to decorate his room for the first time. I had that joy.
Yeah.
And so it's just been constantly, just creating what I want in here, what parts of this room are reflective of me and my experiences and the like. And so that's why it's become so special for me.
Isn't that such a cool concept as an adult that I don't think I have fully appreciated, but I'm getting there in terms of just getting back into kind of like that sacred space, play space, totally just creative, abundant space that I think we kind of abandon, or we think that we need to grow out of. But I'm with you, man.
Yeah, and I think that's, you're kind of in the process of, dude, I'm 49. It took
35.
So it took me till I was literally 49 years old. It was this fall.
Wow.
That I woke up to that. So you're ahead of me as far as the linear time goes. But there is something really potent in that. And I bring up the story about the room. In my excitement, it was literally like the 7-year-old was so excited to decorate his room. And that isn't celebrated. It's not honored, unfortunately. In this community here in Austin, it is. Are you familiar with Gavin Jones? Do you know who Gavin is? He was in LA for a number of years. He moved here, and he's had a big influence on my life. He moved here in November and lives with that kid-like spirit. Very successful. Has some amazing businesses, but never loses touch with that child. And what he shared with me, and I've heard this before, but it really landed for me when he shared it with me, is, look, that child is going to drive all your decisions. Now, is it the wounded child, the hurt child, or is it going to be the child that is healed and, understands, can orient towards joy? And so as I started to heal some of my past traumas and step into that, and really everything fell through with that. Like, I've always had this abundant mindset, but with that, with the wounding, there was a sense that I didn't deserve it.
Sure, yeah. I can relate, yeah.
Give away my time. I would give away my money. I would invest in things that I would never invest in today because I didn't want to miss out on something. Or there was a friend who was doing it, and I have this money, and there's this underlying belief that I don't really deserve it, so I'll just give him some, even though I think the project is going to fail. So I didn't have the boundaries, but as I started to go into that, understand that, I just don't feel like I deserve this, but actually I do. Like, why? Like, basically, why not? And then you start to uncover where in your past you were told that you didn't deserve it, or you received that information, I should say. I'm going to be very clear. My interpretation of it was that I didn't deserve it. Now, it could have been my dad being really hard on me, but his intention was to make me the best son he could. His way was received by me as me not being enough, me not being lovable, me being stupid, me being a fuck up, whatever. That's how I interpreted it. And because of that, you kind of have these wounds. Now, the gratitude comes in the fact that my reaction to that was to become a high achiever. And so I was able to create resiliency and get clarity on what I needed to do, what I believed I needed to do to earn love. I needed to perform. I needed to achieve.
To not be a fuck up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll show them that I'm smart. And so there's benefits in that. I try not to be that way with my kids. I try to be very intentional. I mean, you met my son Jake. He's 18. Yeah. I can't say I was like that all the time with him. And I have a son who's 15 and my daughter is almost 14. But dude, as I did my work, and again, it's been quite recently within the last 6-8 months that I've been able to show up for them way differently. I'm actually paying attention to what they need, not what I think they need. And then I'll even ask them, and then I give them the opportunity to express their needs. Mm-hmm. And if they don't, then arguably the needs are going to be unmet. But if they can actually express it to me, I can actually help them there. It doesn't mean that, you know, I'm this kind of helicopter dad where I'm trying to make sure everything's all right. It's not that at all. Like, I give them big boundaries. I want them to have their own experience because I know that in my 49 years is how I learned everything. Yeah. Not by someone telling me what to do. So I've really tried to honor that in them, and our relationship, you know, really has grown and deepened. And there's a trust. Mm-hmm. You know, the stuff that my 15-year-old's coming to me with, he's super curious about psychedelics. There aren't a lot of parents, I don't think, that are looking forward to having a conversation like that with their 15-year-old.
Your 15-year-old right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, you know, it wasn't like I jumped at the opportunity immediately. My first reaction was like, drugs.
Yeah, sure.
But I've had experience with them. I've had profound experiences with them. I've also fucked off with them. I've had the whole, you know, the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
But when I really anchored into it, I understood that there was a fear there that was given to me by society, that your kids should not be even thinking about this stuff. I mean, you can think about the church with sex and all that, but like society at large says your kids should not even be thinking about drugs. They shouldn't be researching it. They shouldn't be doing anything. They're too young. Okay. Yeah. They have access to any information they want.
Way more than we did.
Way more.
At the same age. Absolutely. Yeah.
So do I actually want to create a container where I can give him the best education around that? Again, I'm not necessarily ready for him to have his experience with it, but I want to give him the tools that helped me understand this space better. And eventually he's going to do them. I know he is, whether it's through my approval or not. And so if I can create safety in that, and understanding and respect and intention, I don't have fear around that. I have more fear about them drinking because that's a different drug for me. It's legal, but it doesn't mean it's better. Mm-hmm. And so and again, I'm not condoning the use of psychedelics by 15-year-olds. What I'm saying is I want to have the conversation with him. I want to be the first guy he comes to, because if we develop the trust in a space that's really tricky for people.
Yeah.
What happens when the shit really hits the fan for him? I want to be the first phone call.
Yeah.
And right now, I think I would be because he knows I can handle it. But I think we're taught to parent in this society in a way that doesn't create that. It's like, you're the master, they're the pupil, you tell them what to do. You just fucking lecture them.
Just give orders, spark orders.
Didn't work for you, did it? Didn't work for me. And it kept me in fear. That wasn't good, but I was going to do my shit no matter what because I was curious. Kids are curious. They're going to find a way. So if I can, you know, I understand better why parents host parties where their kids can drink.
Yeah, I'd rather you do it under my roof, right?
I get that. Yeah. There's a safety element there. And it doesn't mean the kids aren't going to drink too much. They are. They're kids. They're fucking curious. They've got to find those boundaries, those edges. They're going to be fine. Don't let them drive.
Yeah.
Keep them home. Again, it's not something that we do here, but I'm open-minded enough to understand that there's real practicality in that. And again, you're developing a relationship of trust with your kid. You're saying, I know you're a kid, but you're growing into a young man or a young woman. And so like, let's start to have these conversations and open up that connection there. Yeah. And it's been amazing, man.
I love hearing that. It really does. It gives me hope as, not quite yet, but a soon to be, you know, new dad. You know, my wife and I are having those conversations, and it's absolutely going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And a big part of my kind of background is like the health aspect. And I think where we are now as a society is that we have, like, to your point of so much more information, accessible information. I think we've come a long way as a society in terms of bringing awareness to how we can improve our health, how we can add longevity. Now, there's a lot of arguments to be made that, this generation is not going to outlive the previous kind of thing. And I'm not trying to go down that rabbit hole, but in so much of like what you do and the whole unlearn aspect, I think we're also in a new paradigm shift of that next level sense of awareness, of the T word, of trauma, and parents now finally kind of knocking on that door, reliving and going down that rabbit hole themselves to hopefully then kind of, maybe not saves, not the right word, but just open up that channel of communication with their children, so that I think this next generation, your children, are not only going to have so much more information about their health and their wellness and job opportunities and how to add longevity to their life, but just like to step out of that container a bit more. Would you agree? And like kind of having like this next generation of traumatic awareness?
Yes, I think that's a great point. And I think the important thing that you just mentioned is when we do our inner work, when we heal the trauma, whether it's the capital T or the lowercase t, when we do that, we actually heal it for our lineage. That's what I believe. And so as I go through that, I actually get to show up very differently for my kids, because I go back, see what the trauma was. I see how it changed me. And I understand that that's available to them too. So what can I share about my experience to give them a little bit more color on what it means to look at pornography at a very young age? They all do. Okay, you're going to do it. I can't keep you from doing it. Whether I put a lock on your phone or computer, you've got friends. Like like I'm not stupid, but give them the idea of like, this is what can happen when you do that. And there's no shame, there's none of that around it, but it's just an awareness for them that this isn't, there's no such thing as a free lunch. You're going to look at pornography as a young kid. I get it. I did too. Someone gave it to me very young. And for me, it just sexualized everything. Okay. So now as I'm going back to heal that, I understand I can speak to them in a way through my own experience.
Exactly.
And there's a, when you're speaking that way, when you're talking to someone who's had an experience with something and they've healed some trauma, there's a message that comes through at a frequency and energy that you just get it, versus someone who's parroting something they read from a book or heard in a podcast. You're like, oh, this is interesting, but that doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
But when you're speaking about your experience, when you come in as the wounded healer or whatever the archetype is, there's real medicine in that. And again, I want them to have their own experience. I'm not a guy that says no. Now, maybe in the past I was, and I bring up health that I think is so interesting. My wife and I are super dialed into that space as well. But my kids, for a long time, we pretty much forced it on them.
Mm-hmm. Like sports and activities, or
more just like the healthy eating.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and
like the whole family's going keto. Like, you're going to do it.
And it's the fucking best intentions in the world, but that they don't see it that way. So they need to go through their own experience with food, and you keep throwing the nuggets out there. You keep living your life, and they see you're healthy. They see at 49 you have a lot of vitality, that you look younger than they see these things. They're paying attention. It doesn't mean they're going to implement it right now. It may take my son till he's 45 until it lands. Okay, that's his journey. The more I try to force him into living my life, the more I push him away from me and the real medicine that I have to share with him. So I just got to live my life. And when he comes to me, my 15-year-old comes to me about psychedelics. I tell him about all my experiences because I talk about it on the podcast. He can listen to my podcast. Like, I'm an open book.
Knowledge,
yeah. So when I can, go deeper into those experiences and share some really, maybe stuff I haven't shared on the podcast, that pulls him in closer to me. Now there's this exchange going on.
Yeah.
And there, again, it's like building trust in that relationship. But again, it worked for a while, getting the kids to eat healthy, but eventually it just doesn't work because they're not ready. But it doesn't mean you can't create a container in your home that is health giving.
Yeah, absolutely.
But don't beat yourself up if your kid's drinking Dr. Pepper and eating a candy bar with his friends. It's like, they're fucking kids. They're gonna be fine.
Like running out the door, not the high fructose corn syrup. I raised you better.
Yes, because you take it as a judgment on you. I'm a bad parent.
Yeah,
That's what society wants you to think. Control your kid. If you can't control, there's no such thing as a bad kid, there's a bad parent. I used to say that shit all the time. I don't believe that. I believe that everyone's having their own experience. Like, how can we show up for these kids? Let them have their own experience. Really widen the boundaries, but keep an eye on those edges and know that sometimes they're going to go to a place where, like, oops, I gave them a little too much room there.
Sure. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it because I'm trying to be a cool dad. I'm doing it because I want this kid to have his own experience.
Yeah.
And I want to show him that I trust him and I trust his judgment. And if he's not sure, he can come to me and ask me.
In order to get trust, you have to give it, right? In order to get respect, you have to give it. When did all this happen for you? Before you became and still are becoming this model for this kind of rewiring and awareness and unlearning for the next generation, your next generation. When did it first happen for you? Was there a big catalyst, a major event?
Bro, there was a catalyst like a motherfucker.
Let's hear it. Let's hear the motherfucker.
October 1st, 2017, I was in Las Vegas at the Route 91 Music Festival when Jason Aldean was playing, when the guy was shooting down. The
wow,
shooting
you were
down.
there.
So I was there.
Wow.
He was shooting down, I believe it was the MGM. There were tour buses between him and the stage. I was behind. As it turned out, when it happened, I was near the tour buses, so I hid behind the tour buses with my friend and a bunch of other people and took cover for, I don't even know how long it was, 5-10 minutes. You know, the shooting stopped and we were still in the place for a bit. But in that moment, so I was 45 at the time, if you looked at my Instagram, you know, it would be a life that anybody would have wanted, you know. And in fact, earlier in the summer, I flew private to the Mayweather-McGregor fight, and then I flew private up to New York, where I played golf with Jordan Spieth, Ricky Fowler, and Justin Thomas.
Wow.
Through a mutual friend. You know, one of my best friends was friends with them, so I get to hang with them. And then they leave to go play in a tournament, and Michael Jordan comes up with his group of 6 or 7 guys. And so I'm with them for 3 days playing golf, gambling, drinking tequila, whatever. Like, holy shit, look at my life. But I was chasing something, and I wasn't doing any of the inner work. I didn't know who I was, and I was trying to find myself in all these experiences. Not really the experiences that I'm talking about. I mean, they're all important, right? That experience, when I got on the other side of it, you know, when I would come home from these, I would come home feeling like fucking pretty cool, pretty proud of myself. And
Naturally, yeah.
And my wife could sense that energy. She's like, without saying, is like, I don't fucking care about those guys. Like, who are you?
Wow. That hit hard, huh?
Big time.
Wow.
Big time. I haven't talked about that in a while.
Wow. Thank you for sharing.
And so she would bring me back to earth. And I would bring myself lower because I would feel like a fraud. Wow. And I was in some ways. I wasn't expressing, I didn't know who I was.
Mm-hmm.
So I was living through all these different masks. I was hanging out with quote unquote cool people. And I had that stuff on my Instagram, man, because I don't take it down. It's a reminder of what can happen when you lose or you don't know who you are.
Keep that tether.
Yeah. And, you know, there's definitely a part of me that's like kind of a little embarrassed about it, but it's like, it's okay. It's part of my evolution. It's part of my growth. These are the experiences that have brought me to this conversation today.
Absolutely.
So with that in the backdrop, I'm sitting there, as the shots are firing, and there's just a sense over me like, I did everything I was supposed to do. I fucking accumulated all the things and many more than I ever thought I could do in a lifetime. And I'm fucking I'm unfulfilled.
That was the word that came to mind.
Unfulfilled.
Wow.
Like, what the fuck happened? Like I played by the rules. And I was playing the wrong game. And I didn't know that.
Wow.
That's the game we're taught, unfortunately. And so
playing by the rules, but playing the wrong game. That's hitting me. Wow. Yeah.
Because it's never going to be enough.
Yeah.
The Michael Jordans, whatever, there's always got to be another one after that. Because you're running on external validation. You don't love yourself. You're looking for love from other people and adulation. And you want your buddies to say how cool it is. And I could even sense from like 3 of my best friends, they're just like, that shit's cool, but like, we don't like care about that. And I was so stuck in my shit that I couldn't quite hear that. And I didn't think they were jealous or anything, but I was like, they're just, they don't kind of get it. You know, this is pretty awesome. But when I left Las Vegas, I left on Monday. So that was a Sunday. I left on Monday. On Tuesday, I had an NAD plus IV therapy, scheduled it on it. I had done it before the summer, before we had left for our summer in Idaho. And I was going to start up again because I had this awareness, you know, as I left the summer that I wasn't taking care of myself. I'm like, I had to start working out again, take care of my shit. And on that Tuesday, I met Kyle Kingsbury. And I don't know if there's been anybody in my life that has created more just opportunity for me to explore myself through his own being able to hold space for me in the process I was in, and all the people I've met because of him. My whole, like, basically everybody who's here on Wednesday, there's some tentacle that runs back to him in some way. So I'm forever grateful for him, for him bringing me into this vortex of real change. But I went on this journey, and Kyle helped give me the tools of exploring, like, why am I here? And that's, you know, why am I here? Who am I? Who am I without
super
all
light
this?
questions.
Yeah. And there's no answer except there's more inquiry and there's more going into different experiences to figure that out. And it could be plant medicines. I've done a few of those. It could be just doing breath work. It could be getting still, walking outside with your shirt off. It's reading books. It's being in space with other people who are in that same experience. So for about 18 months, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew I was doing, I had a North Star. I didn't know what it was, but it was that, you know. It was about 18 months later, I had this awareness, like, oh, I'm just trying to figure out why I'm here and who I am. And so it gave context to what had happened up until then, and it gave me some language to share with my wife, who was like, what the fuck's going on with you? Like, you're changing, and some of it's cool, but some of it's scary. Like, there's such an intensity around the unlearning and the questioning.
It's an absolute intensity, especially with a partner, to where if you're not on the same page, or I'm sure, I'm not to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure you were experiencing and going down so many different paths that you probably weren't yet vocalizing with her
at all.
Because I've been there. Because you're like, how do you vocalize some of this stuff? You know,
you're in your process.
Yeah.
And she was doing her own work, so it wasn't like she was not familiar with it, but you know, you layer in trying to figure out who you are with this high achiever mentality. You go in with a lot of intensity, and unfortunately, or fortunately, you go in with a lot of self-focus, and so you shut a lot of things out. And so our relationship was suffering because we were not connected. But in my mind, I'm like, I'm just trying to get to be the best version of me for you and the kids and everybody else. And so I just need to do this work. But I just didn't understand that there's nuance around that. You can still do the work and still be very much part of the fabric of the family.
I'm so glad you said that. I person listening, watching, like, go back and listen to that again. I think it's a really profound concept that we often struggle with, and we often justify the most, because it's like, no, I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for us. But there are so many other nuances that need to be considered in that process. Through just communication.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like trying to get to, for me, I was like trying to get to the finish line. Okay, I want to get to my goal, which is to find out who I am. But it's always unfolding. Especially if I'm paying attention, it will always unfold and it will always change and it'll always be something different. But if I can be present to it and just appreciate that journey of discovering new things about myself, there's no definitive, like I did it. It's like I'm just in it and I appreciate it. And sometimes I get, kicked out of it, and that's okay too. It's part of the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for kind of sharing that. I mean, I think judging by your reaction and just knowing that event, I mean, that was definitely a big T event. And that's been kind of my unlearning over the last couple of years. Everybody says that when you move to LA, things are going to happen. The woo is going to happen to you. And I didn't really believe it, but just call it the environment, call it the city, but just honestly community. I mean, Kyle's been on the show, back in 2018, meeting him and meeting so many other people and just tapping into networks after networks and people. And like you said, that the tentacles of like who they are has just left the most profound impact in my life and showed me all of these big T's and little T's that have just become, I keep going back to your word, the unlearning, and just an unraveling, but an unraveling to the most profound truth that I've ever experienced. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't give as much credit to. And I absolutely will speak for myself and say that I didn't think so. Even just like a year ago, 2 years ago, I had it figured out. I was like, no, I got health. I'm good. Like I got my partner, like life is good, but like that is just clearly the tip of the iceberg. So how would you kind of advise somebody or translate to somebody who thinks that we're good, we have it figured out, maybe we haven't had this big come to Jesus moment yet, or maybe you never will, but just how can you even kind of translate that there is stuff on the other side that you might want to be, checking out?
Yeah, great question. And I did have the benefit of that catalyst, the catalytic moment that shook my world up, and it called into question my entire belief system. A lot of people don't have that as a trigger to really go into that healing. One of the things that has been so helpful in this, what you just talked about, is being around people who can hold space for that, and they're in it and they can handle it, because there is definitely a part of it that's very solitary. Like you're going through your own shit.
Absolutely.
You have to go through your own shit, but to have people around you that understand it and can, and again, I can't think of a better term than hold space for your process, and not rushing you through it to try to make you feel better. Can just listen, not try to fix anything, because there's nothing to be fixed. It's just your own healing and will happen in your own time. I mean, one of the best ways is just to get quiet and to really, when things trigger you, because they trigger all of us, like just try to sit with like, what is it? Just keep coming back to like curiosity around the things that are triggering you, because there's a real message there for something that's either unprocessed, or maybe there is some trauma there. And as you bring it to the surface, I know it sounds like it's painful, but like there's so much on the other side of it. There's a gift on the other side, and it's not just for you, it's for others too.
Well said.
And I think people, understandably so, they don't want to do the work because it seems like a lot. It's a heavy lift. Like I've got a pretty good life. I like my life, and I get that. I liked my life too. But I was living someone else's life. It was the rules of society, and I was playing by them, but it's not who I was. I wasn't acting in service to, kind of to the things that I'm doing today, where I'm having these conversations to just open the aperture a little bit for people. Like, I'm not saying you got to go change everything right now, but just get curious around your own life. And if you see someone who just seems to be living in pure joy, not that they don't have issues and they don't have hard times, but authentic joy, get curious around what they're doing, and really again, you've got to go through your own experience, but there's a lot of learning to be done by others that are living the life that you think you want to lead.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's an important part. And also, as you go through that process and you thought you had it figured out and then you realize you didn't, like, take it easy on yourself. Like, don't be like, I was such a fucking idiot. I thought I had it all figured out and I'm full of shit. You're doing the best you could. Like, you thought what you thought. And that's just the fact. So own that, accept that, and just know that you're seeing things a little bit differently right now. You have a little more consciousness around what's going on. And there may be a rush to change everything, and that's okay too. It doesn't quite work that way for most people, but try it. I tried to.
Yeah.
And in along the way, I tried to be the best at meditating and the best at going in the cold plunge and all these things. And once I got present with those things, once I started doing those conscious practices consciously versus unconsciously, I had actually done enough quote unquote reps in them so I could actually go into them quite easily. So there's a reason for all of it, and you could certainly lose your mind trying to pull together all the threads, but just know and have the understanding that it's all happening for a reason, and you don't need to know why, but it's got you to where you are right now, and the ways you may have shown up or not shown up in your life in the past that are hard for you to confront, if you can just own that. Because for a long time, I tried to push those things away. I tried to outrun them, tried to keep those shadows in the darkness. And it doesn't work. They don't stay there. They come back.
Ain't that the truth?
With more intensity until you resolve them, until you say, you know what, I'm all those things. And you know what, I'm still lovable because of that. That's the best I had. It's what I was taught. It's what, in all times, we are doing the best we can. And I know it doesn't feel good. We're not acting, maybe like a Mother Teresa, but it's okay. Give yourself permission to be okay with it.
I think grace for me is the word that comes to mind, what you were talking about. Like how powerful would it be for all of us if we all received a little bit more grace in our life, but especially if we were the one giving it to us, if it came to us from us, how impactful would that be? I know I would have appreciated it years ago, and hell, probably still can now.
I love that you bring that up, because I had a conversation with a close friend of mine recently, and that very thing came up. We were talking about my relationship with Peyton, and there was like some triggering that had happened, and he had an awareness that I wasn't giving myself grace. He's like, look, Cal, you've come so far. Instead of it taking 3 months for you to realize you had done something that maybe triggered Peyton, now it takes you 30 minutes or 5 minutes. Like your mile time. Right, think about it in the context of yes,
yeah, absolutely.
Instead of a 12-minute mile, you're like down to 5.5 or whatever. It's like you're shaving time off your mile. But the way you look at it is, I'm still fucking up. I still can't get this right. I'm still like, no. You're you're still gonna have these things that trigger your wife, and she's gonna trigger you. It's okay, but. And I'm going to pull in another conversation I had with a different friend. If the gun is not loaded, there's nothing to trigger.
Wow. Okay.
And so to unload that gun for me is to give myself grace. And so when my wife is upset with something that I did where I didn't see her in a way that she wanted to be seen, instead of thinking I'm a fucking asshole, I'm never going to get this right, just own it and then try to do better and say, you know what, you're doing the best you can. Like, what else would you be doing? And then when I do that, when I give myself grace, then I give her grace too, because now I know what it feels like. But I can't give her grace if I can't give it to myself. I don't know what it is. And I need to give her grace in the moments where I feel like she may be triggering me or she may not be at her best. And it's like this thing where you're absolutely right. Like we need to give it to ourselves first. We need to be easy on ourselves. We got to think about it, and again, the context of the mile time really made sense to me.
A perfect analogy. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up the grace piece. It's
Good.
important.
That was great. That was great. It sounds like in your life, you've had a good amount of people, or at least, one or two that have really left a lasting impression on you and maybe were that kind of guide in the middle of the night that had a light for you to put you on a new path, or even just to illuminate the one that you were already on, but were doubtful of. And I've had so many people like that in my life. And I'm curious, do you ever feel like, because sometimes I do, there's like a reciprocity that needs to happen. I just feel so deeply impacted by people sometimes. I'm like, how can I ever, it's like you have shown me the meaning of my life or put me on the path to discovering my truest, most authentic self. And as cliche as it might sound, like it is the most truest thing I think I've ever experienced.
I like most truest.
The most truest,
cool.
the most truestest. Like, how do we give back to those people? How do we kind of have a reciprocity? Or is that just another thing in our head that we feel like we need to work towards?
I would say it's another thing in our head. And I would say what they showed you, I'll talk about me. What these men and women have shown me is through their example. Now they've held counsel for me too, but they're living that life.
Sure. Yeah.
So the best thing I can do to show my appreciation is to move forward in that I am showing up as me in the full embodiment of who I am. And by doing that, I'm giving others permission, just like that person did for you and me, to do the same. And there's nothing better than that, because you start to see, again, I have these Wednesday workouts, and we haven't talked about it here yet, but for the past 8 months, people have been coming over to my place, and today was the kind of season-ending party because I'm leaving
season
for this
finale.
Yeah, it was amazing, and we had 45 people here.
That's incredible.
There's something that's happening within that group, and I can see that I have a part in it, and everybody else who shows up has a part in it. And we leave this on Wednesday, and we radiate that out into our individual worlds, and it is fucking powerful. And so it's very much like almost like get out of the mind piece and into like, how can I just embody all of this wisdom and learning and healing and brotherhood? If I can just walk through the world like that, people are going to pick up that energetic signature. They just are.
Hell yeah.
If they're ready to.
Yeah.
If they're ready to. And if they're not, they might think you're a fucking weirdo or whatever, but eventually maybe they're just like, okay, but then maybe this guy's onto something. Because I've definitely had that experience with people like, that guy's fucking weird. And then it's, months later, it's like, I can't spend enough time with that guy.
And it's so true to your point of like when they're ready, because I've come back to people to where like, that sounds weird. She's weird. He's crazy. What you're talking about, I will never be into. And now all I do is go to those people for those things.
Yes.
It's to your point is you have to kind of just, even if you haven't had this kind of major come to Jesus moment or a big T word, if we just pose the question, I think of what if I just kind of challenged my comfy life? What if I just thought and accepted that what they're saying is of interest to me or is true? Just any kind of question like that, and just go down just one step in that rabbit hole and just see. I think it's one of the greatest litmus tests ever. It's just, I always go back to kind of my health and fitness roots because it's what I would do so much with clients in my coaching practice, and where I think a lot of people are is like, oh, I want to improve my life. I want to change my life. What do we typically do? I'm going to go on a diet.
Yeah.
I'm going to start working out. I'm going to run. And so we start with the external self first, and it does amazing things, but you're going to reach a point to where like, congratulations, you've achieved fitness, you've achieved health, and you can maintain that. And that's great. But so now like, what about the internal stuff? And that was kind of like another one of my big T's for sure. I was sharing with you earlier about, the loss of my father. And that was probably one of the most traumatic experiences of my life because he was my idol, my best friend. And it was just happened so fast. And I was 19 years old. I had just left home. I just started my new career in the Army, and it was just like I was becoming a man, but then I lost my father. I lost my model. And then I ran for like 12 years after that. And I chased physical health, and I chased the external self, and I chased successes. I was playing by the rules, but I was damn sure playing somebody else's game. And all that internal shit just spewed out in every ugly way you could imagine. Panic attacks, anxiety, losing relationships, my job struggling, just questioning everything. But I was like, everything's good on the outside, and I had never, ever, ever questioned anything internally until I just took out a piece of paper and just started brain dumping. And the shit that came out of me, I was just like, where the hell did this come from? And it's all there. People have it in there. So maybe don't wait for a big T. Get ahead of the big T,
Yeah, and I think I love this, the questioning. I think that's the important part. Have the courage to question it all. Like, what would it mean if all your beliefs were bullshit? If they were someone else's? This possible.
That's a big question,
and it's terrifying because it's like, well, we have such an attachment to our belief system that if I'm not my belief system, if that belief system is a house of cards, who am I?
Yeah. Do I question everything?
Yeah.
Was everybody bullshitting me? Was I bullshitting myself? Yeah.
And what I say, because I've been in the experience of that, and I've been in that dark night of the soul, like, I'm fucking not, like, who am I? Because I don't know if any of this shit is actually true. On the other side of that is you actually get to make decisions and choices about what you believe. And I don't even like to use the word believe because there's something there. Like, the things, you get to orient towards your experience in the things you know.
Yeah.
You just know them now.
Yeah, knowing was coming to mind when you said that. Yeah. You get to establish your own knowing.
And if we can just pull away from belief systems and get into our knowing and get into the body of the gut and the heart is always right for you. But it's conditioned out of us. We're so heady. Our whole society is so heady that the real trick is to get down into that heart, And as I've done that, it's what made me a great trader. I could get into the gut. I was decent at math, but it wasn't about math. I just could feel it.
Go with those gut feelings.
Buy, sell, boom. Like, they weren't all winners, but I would get in a flow and I would see everything from just a knowing.
Sure. Yeah.
Not because I was like super smart with numbers.
I don't do math good. So you can leg up on me on there for sure.
Well, and then, but I wasn't tapping into it anywhere else in my life.
Gotcha.
It's what I've reconnected to in the past year and a half, 2 years. I don't even know when it really started. Someone asked me a question. My instinct may be to answer with my mind, but I tune into myself. It could be we're at a restaurant and I'm looking for a recommendation and the guy recommends, crab cakes. And I like, nope. Where before I'd be like, sure, he's recommending it. Like, okay, cool. But like, nope.
Yeah.
It's something as subtle as that. Or do I want to invest in something? It's like, do I really want to? And it's like, if I start getting in my head about it, I can figure out reasons why or why not. But if I just feel into it, then I just have a sense of peace around it. And I'm okay no matter what happens. But that's really the journey for a lot of us, is to get back into the body and stay in the body and to use the mind when you need to. But don't let it run your life. It ran my life for a long time. That's where what you were talking about with, this external validation. People can do fitness really well. They can eat a great diet, but if they don't change that relationship to self, right? You're going to run out of fuel with the fitness.
Or the relationship to the relationship with your workout, the relationship with your food.
Yeah.
It's so much more. Relationships tie in heavily to like the why and the driving force behind it all.
Yeah, and it's okay if you're doing fitness and nutrition and whatever for those reasons. It doesn't mean you can't shift and start to look at it differently. Why am I doing? For me, I got into CrossFit in like 2008 or 2009, and I got like really into training hard, and I put on a lot of muscle, and everybody was telling me how great I was, and I didn't know how to take those compliments. So I got my ego big. And so I wanted to continue to show up with that mask on. I'm the fittest guy at this age. Okay. That's who I am. And dude, it like almost works, but it doesn't.
It almost works. It does. Yeah.
You know, but for me, I had to change the relationship to why I was doing it. I was doing it to meet these expectations, these assumed expectations of others. They don't really fucking care. They were just probably trying to be nice. But when you don't have the right relationship to yourself, you start to take those on in a different way. And I didn't. So as I've started to understand who I am, I know how to receive a compliment now.
Yeah.
And I don't attach to it. It's like I have gratitude for it. And I don't let it do anything else but just be a thing that someone shared with me. And now when I work out, I do it because I fucking want to, because it's fun. It brings me joy. And it helps to have 45 guys or 30 guys or 12 guys. I actually don't go out and work out by myself anymore. It's not that fun for me.
Huh.
That's all I used to do for fucking years. It was just me. I never liked working out with other people.
So the process was about you. The end result was about you. Now it's about everybody else.
Yeah, it's about just getting in a collective
Which still
energy.
serves you at the end.
Fuck yeah, because I'm still attending to my fitness, which is important, but it was the number one thing on my list before for different reasons. You know, and I mean, I could be such a dick. Like my kids would come in and I'm like getting ready to do like a heavy power clean and I'm like, I'm fucking working out right now. Or just something like,
I just do my pre-workout. You're wasting my time.
yeah, the fucking clock is ticking.
The tingly's getting me. I got the beta alanine going to run out. What do you want? Go to your mom.
Yes. And just that, I was that guy. And it's not to say that I won't work out by myself, but I'm not called to it. I would work out by myself back then because I wanted to improve my power clean. I wanted to improve my snatch, my Fran time, whatever it was. I was fucking grinding, but no one else gave a shit about that. And so I was chasing something for other people that no one cared about. So as I backed off that, it's like, I mean, maybe I'll go ride the Peloton, but I haven't done that in months. So it's just like, and people are like, dude, what do you do? Like, what's your workout? What do you eat? I'm like, I work out fucking once a week with you assholes. And that's it.
Which is such a testament in and of itself to when you do something and have joy in it, when you do something and you are building a healthy relationship, like I was saying, and you do it with others, there are just so many other factors that contribute to a process such as fitness, such as dieting, such as physical activity that we can't even understand or describe, but it's working, dude. It's working.
But you're just spot on there. When you're in alignment with who you are and what brings you joy, and I'm glad you brought that up because that is the one word for me when I met Garen, joy. And I've been orienting towards joy since I started to understand the power of it, whether it's what I'm going to invest in, how I'm going to spend my time, certainly the workouts. And once you do that, like you said, all these other things just fall into place.
Yeah.
I don't know how I eat. I don't know what I work out with you guys. Like when you're in alignment, all that other stuff just takes care of itself. You're not in your head trying to figure out how do I lose this? Yeah, it's your heart. You're right. And so it's very simple. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it's very simple. Get clear on who you are. Then get clear on what brings you joy. And those things that bring you joy, just invite more of those into your life. And the things that don't bring you joy, just try to remove those, you know, or try to understand why they don't bring you joy. And if you really can't get to a sense of joy with them, then do your best to not have them in your world.
Absolutely. I agree. A question came to mind when you're kind of describing going from the unknowing to the knowing. When we get on the path to what do I believe? Who am I? What do I want? I've experienced things where, what's the best way to say this? Like I can't bring any of that with me. Like I know better now and I don't want that kind of belief, or I don't want to engage in these kind of activities, or I don't want to be associated with kind of, and so I guess what I'm trying to say is the path to knowing ourselves often, at least for me, has felt like still kind of just, what do I let go of and what do I keep? What do I try to abandon and what do I try to fully step into? And certain things I think are pretty clear, but others, I guess my question is, are other things in our past life, other things that, can we bring them with us and somehow, like, what can we use from the unknowing to step into the knowing that can still serve us? Or how do we kind of have this filtration process or questioning process?
Yeah, great question. And I think there's a lot in that. I would say, for one, the things in our past, a dear friend of mine, Boyd Vardy, really wise man, told me when we were podcasting, I had made a comment about my trading life, and he said, this might get me too. When you learn to love Trader Cal, there's real medicine in there for you.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a bit of shame I had around myself as a trader. It's not like I did anything wrong. I didn't do anything illegal. I was a faithful husband and all that, but there was shame that here I am awakening to this other way of being in the world. It's like, oh, there was a time when I didn't think that way. And
yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I tried to shed that and it didn't work. I've embraced it, and it's hard because I didn't really know how to, but I was just open to it. And the way I really anchored into it was, I'm writing a book, and as I was working with my partner on it, we were riffing here for 3 days, and by day 2, I start talking about trading, and he's like, dude, you're fucking lighting up. All these messages and this learning and all the stuff.
Ding.
Yeah. And he goes, by day 3, he goes, I was learning so much from you just talking through the lens of a trader.
Wow.
And so for me, to love that version of me was to be in that process of the book. And the book is actually going to have some pieces of trading through the lens of a trader. We're still kind of working that out, but it feels so appropriate, and that's my healing of that version of me that I had some tension around. And so I think to discard those things, like I said before, you can try and just see how it continues to show up in your life, or you can learn to love that version of yourself with the grace that we were just talking about. And remember, even though you weren't a 5-year-old in that life, there's still a wounded 5-year-old that is making decisions back then for you.
Yeah.
And so can you, right, sit down with that 5-year-old version of you, that wounded 5-year-old version of you, and put your arm around yourself and show yourself the love and compassion you would show any 5-year-old.
Yeah.
And it's hard for us because we're our own worst critics. We got to start to understand that there's a wounded child in there, and they need love and compassion and grace. And the only one who can do it is ourselves.
Yeah.
So I'm in that practice right now. It's not easy. I'll say that. It's not. I forget.
Yeah.
Still hard on myself, but I'm much better.
Well, I appreciate that insight, man. And I agree wholeheartedly. And it's like, the more you put yourself on this path to the knowing and stepping more into what you want, just realizing that you can create all of this, it sounds so overwhelming to say that it's never ending, but it's always fruitful. And it's fruitful in some ways that we're hopeful for, like, this is great, it's a breakthrough, it's all lovey-dovey, warms, hugs. Other times it comes wrapped in, a really, really, really ugly box.
And there's some big ass learning in that. And yeah, I love that you bring that up, because it's one of the things that is challenging for someone like me who is the get to the finish line. Just like be in the process of that and be in the energy of it. And there's so much, there's just a lot. I mean, I keep coming back to Don Miguel Ruiz and the 4 agreements. And when he talks in the beginning of the book, you've made all these agreements and now you have to unlock them. And I read that book probably 5 times before, like, the 6th time, I'm like, because I would just brush over them. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. There's too many. I don't even know what they are.
Yeah.
And then I started to understand, when they come up, just look at them, get curious, and then unlock them one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get to the end. You're going to have a greater awareness. And that's the key, I think, is to be in the process of questioning and being curious and being okay with where you're at.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree more. And it's all this stuff that I used to hear of like, oh, I'm not in alignment with that, or that's too woo-woo or cliche or whatever, but there's never been anything more true. And so I really hope that the person listening, watching can really just hear that, that there is no answer other than like the one that you want to create for yourself, and just to keep showing up for yourself, keep staying committed to the process. And the process changes. Like you can be in maintenance phase of the process. I go through periods of that where months will go by and I'm just good, whether that's the ego or truth, but I'm just good. But then something will happen, or I will remember that I'm kind of coasting a little bit, and I'll just challenge something, or something will happen, little T, big T. And like, oh, here we go. And instead of spiraling out of control like I used to, or even worse, in my opinion, let me just compartmentalize this. Let me stuff it down. Because I remember what happens when you do that.
Yeah.
I remember all of the nightmares and the panic attacks and just the loss and just things that I didn't want for myself in my life. And so like, pay attention to that and just commit when it shows up, and coast when you're coasting, and continue to be that example is, I think, one of my other favorite kind of takeaways from you is the payback. The greatest thing we could ever do is to just to show up for the process and let that resonate out. And that's how we change the world, right?
There's truth in that. And it's not spoken word. It's you showing up as your true self. And I think that's probably one of the biggest shifts I've had too, is I don't think anyone would say that, oh, he's fake, but I knew that I would go to a party, there'd be different people there, and I felt like I had to put on different masks to different people.
Assimilate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I just had this awareness. And again, it was around the time I met Garen. I was just kind of coming into this another awakening. And I just started showing up as me. And I started to see that that's fucking all anybody ever wants. And then I started to get really clear on who I am and what I love. And just, it happened like that, but it was many years in the making. And it maybe sounds a bit cliche that nobody knows you better than you, but that's all people ever want. They don't want you to show up as some masked up whatever. And we understand why. I understand why. I've done it.
Yeah.
But now, like, I can be in a room full of, I don't care who they are. I don't care how it's fucking Michael Jordan or whoever. Like, I'm just me. And I realize that my medicine is what I have to share. And I don't need to show up any differently than that.
Yeah. Describing that and kind of getting towards the end here, I just want to say thank you again for opening up your home and your time. It's been really, really long time coming, man. Like I was telling you before, like almost a year and a half, almost.
Yeah, a little, yeah.
Like you were
like February of 2020.
It was quite literally, I think, the last IRL thing that I did in Los Angeles. We're at that big dinner, and then boom, everything shut down afterwards. So what I want to say before I get to the final question, I would love your feedback on this, is in my process and in my committing to the knowing, I have come back to certain people and relationships in my life that I realized like I was actually a bottleneck in your path, and in so was my own. And what I mean, and I may struggle to kind of articulate this, but just knowing what I know now, looking back into past conversations and interactions with people, I kind of realized that they were in a way testing me or probing me to, where am I in my journey kind of thing. And then I could distinctly go back to how I would react to things, what I would say, or even sometimes what I didn't say. And I realized like I was actually a limiting factor in our relationship. I was a limiting factor, and not to beat myself up because I didn't know any better at the time, but I've come back to them now and said, like, I've apologized. And I can honestly tell that because they cared so much for me, they were keeping space for me and they were giving me grace when I didn't even realize it. And I could come back to that now and be like, I'm sorry for not being able to show up for you as much as I could tell you wanted me to. And then now in doing so, I'm showing up more for myself. And like, I'm sorry for being a hindrance to our relationship. I'm just like, what could have been, and it's all good. It all worked out now. But it's one of those things to where you don't fully realize not only your own potential, but when you do step into your potential, what that does, the expansiveness it has for the right people in your life. Yeah. If any of that made any sense.
It totally did. And I would invite you to change one word.
Okay.
And instead of saying, I apologize, you say, I acknowledge.
Yeah.
Because the apologize, this feels
like I did something wrong.
You didn't do anything wrong. You were exactly where you were at.
Yeah.
And they were reaching out and you weren't ready. And because of that, because you have the awareness of that, it's opened you up. And now you know what that feels like. You had to experience that to know. Now you know, and now you're moving forward differently. So I think that's beautiful, but I would just there's nothing wrong with any of that, because you've met plenty of people where you've extended to them,
absolutely,
and they're not ready.
Yeah.
You don't feel like they need to come back and apologize in years, right?
You're absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's similar to like the mentor who gives us, helps us find ourselves, like just continue to keep showing up like that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I'm so glad I said that. That hit me, kind of just unlocked something for me. Absolutely. And speaking of moving forward, that's what we're all about, is having conversations here on the show to become more aware to these concepts that just propel us forward, whether it's just one step, 1%, or maybe someone heard something today that is their catalyst. So how do we move forward, Cal? How do we live a life ever forward? What does that mean to you?
It means not looking into the future, not staying in the future. It means staying in the now and for me, it means being super clear, again, to what brings me joy and continuing to follow those breadcrumbs of joy. And then I am moving forward. There's no other place to go. And I'm not trying to land on any particular goal, any particular outcome. I've given up on outcomes. I stay in the now, and I get really clear. Am I bringing things, people, experiences into my life that are bringing me joy? Great. I'm all good. Whatever happens down the road is gravy, but all I care about is like, am I in joy? And as I've gotten super clear on that and oriented my life to that, some really fucking cool shit's happened. Because I'm not trying to land on an outcome. And I think, unfortunately, we're taught that you set your goals and then you go get them. I know there's a place for goal setting, but it's just been bastardized. I think when we stay in the present about what really is alive for us, what lights us up, just think about that. Like, what lights you up? If you're not quite sure, do a little bit more work about who you are. But it could be something super simple. Maybe it's fucking listening to music. So listen to a little bit more music. Spend time in the things that bring you joy. And then you'll start to attract people that they would have never shown up on your doorstep otherwise. But when you have that out into the world, when you share that frequency, I guarantee you your fucking mind will be blown by the people you meet and the experiences you have.
Could not agree more. I always tell everybody there's never a right or a wrong answer, but I really, really resonate with that. And it's because it's so true for me. And so anybody that's been a part of my journey here on the show and in my content, like if anything I ever do or say or the people that I bring on here impacts you, then like know that is another one of those moments for me. It continues to blow my mind when you keep showing up for yourself, what it not only does for your life, but just the people that it brings in and the people that are already in it, just how much greater that becomes, the more space that opens up between all of you. And then you just turn back and one day you're like, shit, how did it get so good? And it's because you kept focusing on the present.
Yeah.
You kept just being there and being in joy and being in fulfillment, or at least working towards it. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, how did I get here, kind of thing.
Yeah, beautiful. Well said.
Well, Cal, of course, all your information is going to be down in the show notes for everybody, but where can they go to like learn more about you and your work and your content?
I say the best place is probably on Instagram. I share a little bit there. Callahan, and then my podcast, The Great Unlearn, is probably where you find out the most about me and my guest. It's very much this type of conversation. Like, let's just get in the weeds and like, let's figure out what we can share that might be useful for people.
Absolutely. Well, dude, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
pleasure. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much. What a gift.
Shout out Bel Campo for making the connection.
Yeah,
2020.
Anya.
Amazing.